Let's see here. Okay. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Chicago Conservative live stream edition. And today we're gonna be watching Ben Shapiro arrive on the Stephen A. Smith show. Now, not gonna lie, guys. I used to like Stephen A. Smith when I was watching basketball, but I mean, I'm not really a big fan of his anymore because now that I know that he's a grifter and all of that other woke stuff, kind of not for me anymore. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to assume that this is about Ben Shapiro wanting Chauvin to be basically, pardoned. So I believe they're going to discuss this or they're going to get into that. Now, me personally, I don't believe Derek Chauvin should be arrested if he, if it's, look, guys, I seen the autopsy. The dude was pumped with drugs. That's all I'm gonna say. But without further ado, guys, let's just get right into this video. Let's do it.
He's got his own podcast and YouTube show. The man has more than 7.2 million subscribers. He is one of the preeminent conservative voices in the world, not just this country. And he's somebody that called me a jackass. He wanted to see his boy, your boy, as in me. Well, here I am, the Stephen A. Smith Show with Mr. Ben Shapiro up next.
Why do he always gotta be so dramatic when he say stuff, bro? This is why I don't like. I don't know. Maybe I just caught on to him, man. But it's like, dude, just say what you gotta say.
Holla. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you, as I love to do, usually 3 times a week at the very minimum, over the digital airways of YouTube and, of course, iHeartRadio. Want to thank all my followers and subscribers for continuing to show love for the show. Keep it coming, and I'm going to keep on coming. I wanted to transition on a show like today from the regular norm. This
iHeartRadio is fairly liberal, by the way. Just throwing that out there.
It's not going to be a potpourri of topics. It's just a conversation with an individual by the name of Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a guy that's been around for a while. He's established himself in the conservative community as one of the preeminent voices. He's beloved by a lot of conservatives, a lot of right-wingers. He's unapologetic about his positions on practically most, if not all, occasions. And he certainly was that way when it came to talking about Derek Chauvin, the officer,
I knew it.
Most of us believe, and the courts clearly believed, murdered George Floyd.
No, let me just correct something. The courts knew that if Derek Chauvin was found innocent, they would have ripped Minnesota apart because their governor, Tim Walz, don't have any balls. Okay? Let's just put that in the, in the information board, because people don't understand that it was very, very, very controversial during that time when it came to the George Floyd thing. And a lot of black folks was just not woken up enough to understand that this dude just clearly died from drugs. So, yeah, man, I'm not going to say that the judge agreed to that. They just was under peer pressure. What up, Pete?
Several years ago, sparking riots across the country at that particular moment in time. Derek Chauvin, and an officer, police officer,
hey Sharon,
from Minneapolis, Minnesota, ended up being convicted and sentenced to more than 21 years in prison. And in my estimation, he absolutely positively deserved it.
Which makes you a moron. Which makes you a leftist idiot moron, dude. Now, I don't agree with the knees and all of that stuff, but here's the thing, guys. I watch UFC. I see people get choked out all the time. They're not dead. And this dude, look, man, you guys gotta understand. This dude, George Floyd, had first of all, he had 11.0 grams of fentanyl in his bloodstream. You only need 3.0 grams of fentanyl to literally die. And I believe he had another 3.0 grams of methamphetamine on top of that. And he had huge heart conditions. So we just not going to take that into consideration, Stephen A?
Derek Chauvin is an individual that I believe murdered George Floyd, that most Black Americans feel murdered George Floyd, along with a bevy of other people, not just Blacks, not just whites, but even people in the conservative communities.
That's right.
The Sean Hannitys of the world and others proclaim the same thing. Ben Shapiro himself felt that way initially with what he had tweeted out. Upon further reflection, as the trial went on, as evidence came forward, he believed otherwise. And once Derek Chauvin was convicted and sent to prison, in the aftermath of that, Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States, ultimately became the 47th president of the United States, winning this last election in November of 2024. And from that moment on, once he re-entered the White House on January 20th, 2025, Ben Shapiro has stated for the record that he believes Donald Trump should pardon Derek Chauvin.
I mean, and if I'm being honest with you guys, if the evidence is there, I don't see why not, because you guys wouldn't want a falsely accused Black man to be arrested if the evidence is clear that he's innocent.
Took exception to that. I didn't know what he was thinking. I said to myself, why would you suggest such a thing? And I even went so far as to say or to ask,
why would George Floyd consume 11 grams of fentanyl? It was literally white substance in his mouth on the body cam when he was getting pulled over. The dude that sold him the fentanyl, they asked him, did the drugs you sell him produce fentanyl? He pled the fifth in court. So why aren't you speaking about that, Stephen A? Oh, it's because it fits your narrative? Okay.
Ben Shapiro, a devout Jew who is incredibly supportive of Israel and the Jewish community and issues pertaining to the Jewish
community. And this is what I don't like sometimes, guys. This kiss up stuff when it comes to Israel, it needs to stop. Like, dude, Israel not all the way innocent either, bro. Like, come on, man.
Jewish community, I asked a simple question. If George Floyd had been Jewish and there was a neon...
What are you talking about if George Floyd was Jewish? What? See, that's what I be talking about, bro. This dude is a moron. You literally are just looking for a talking point. What if you mean if George Floyd was Jewish? He was off drugs. What does his ethnicity have to do with anything? If this dude was cracked out, first of all, if it was a white guy, you guys wouldn't care. You guys wouldn't care. What are you talking about? Ask the real questions. If George Floyd was white, would they care? No, they would not. They would not, absolutely not care. And what if Derek Chauvin was Black? They wouldn't care either. I mean, maybe they might a little bit because he's a police officer, but come on, bro. Black on black crime don't get reported at all.
On his neck for over 9 minutes. Would he feel the same way? So Ben Shapiro, with his own platform, which is very formidable, I might add, came right back, accused me essentially of race baiting, says it's something that...
Because you are, bro. What do you mean? The whole thing is race bait. The whole thing is literally race bait. Bro, if you support this George Floyd mess, and it's like you are literally dumb. Anybody with a brain would have at least looked at this man's history after what's been proven, after what's been exposed about George Floyd. Even when it comes to him putting a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach. Why aren't you saying that, Stephen A? Why do you talk like this dude is a hero?
That I do all the time, so he's got to turn down the volume every time I'm speaking. He said a lot of things about me. And to his credit, when I invited him on the show to have a man-to-man conversation, he did not hesitate. He actually was supposed to do this days ago. I had to postpone. So, giving credit where credit is due, giving him an opportunity to express whatever it is that he wanted to express to me, about George Floyd, about the whole situation involving his murder at the hands of Derek Chauvin and beyond, I was more than happy to do so. Gave me 30 minutes of his time. And I think it's safe to say that both of us might have learned a little thing or two from this conversation we had.
Stephen A., you flip-flop all day, bro. You are a literal grifter. First you're with the left, then you're with the right, then you're center. It's like, man, I wouldn't even be surprised if this guy voted for Donald Trump, guys. Like, I'm going to just keep it a stack. Did Stephen A. vote for Donald Trump? I don't even think he's this stupid to vote for Kamala, bro. He, like, I don't know, man. He's just, he's obviously a grifter. For sure. Like he don't have a loyalty to any side. The only loyalty he have to is what's basically popular.
How pleasant was it? How tense was it? You'll have to watch to see for yourself. I'm not going to give away the details. All I'm going to tell you is that it's worth watching. And keep in mind, it's me leaning on what I always tell y'all.
Thanks, Paul.
You might think differently than me politically. You might come from a different ethnic background. Your ideology may not be the same as mine. I'm a centrist who leans left. He clearly leans right.
See what I'm saying, bro? And this is what I'm saying, man. Like, I knew he was going to say, I'm a centrist, but I lean to the left. No, dude. You are a full-fledged brainwashed Democrat that grifts when push comes to shove, man. When you want to stay relevant, you'll kiss the right ass a little bit, Stephen A. But at the end of the day, bro, you know your loyalty is to the Democratic Party. Bro, you work with the NBA. It don't get blacker than that, bro. I'm going to just be honest. Predominantly black males are in the NBA. People wouldn't basically take your criticism anymore if you came out as a Trump supporter. This is why you are so wishy-washy, bro. That's why I can't mess with Stephen A. He way too wishy-washy.
I'm not one of those people who believes because you don't think the way that I think that you should be vilified and excoriated.
Man, if Stephen A. running 2028, man, I'm running for mayor. Literally, though. If Stephen A. running 2028, I'll run for mayor of Chicago, guys. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. Because what the...
And what have you. Just because you think differently than me doesn't mean I'm going to shut you down and I don't want to hear a damn word that you have to say. I'm not built like that. I believe grown-ups get together and talk and hash things out in a respectful and decent manner. He called me a jackass. I don't know whether he's capable of doing what I just described myself as doing and being, but I'm about to find out.
You are a jackass.
This is a listening session, asking what I want to ask, but listening to his point of view and his perspective and showing him the respect any decent human being deserves. That's what I'm going to do with Ben Shapiro up next. I do not believe this is a conversation you want to miss. More to Stephen A. Smith show in a minute, right after I pay these bills.
Stop dragging it, please, and just get to it. Jesus Christ. Sorry, we got to add. Okay.
Show wants to make sure to do is Jimmy.
We're going to skip that.
And use code Run Your Game. My next guest is a conservative media personality and host of the Daily Wire's The Ben Shapiro Show. He recently made headlines by calling for Derek Chauvin, the former police.
That is crazy how it took this man, where are we at? 7 minutes. Basically, we're at 8 minutes. It took this man 8 minutes to start the video, bro. Am I tripping? Or is that like insanely dragging it? Is that insanely dragging it or what? 8 minutes is nuts.
Police officer who killed George Floyd to be pardoned. So we're going to get right into that. Please welcome to the show the one and only Mr. Ben Shapiro. Ben, how are you, sir? How's everything?
Boo! Boo! Look, man, I'm gonna let this be known right now. I don't really like Ben Shapiro either because he got, first of all, I don't care about the Daily Wire besides Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, and you know what I'm saying? I think those are the only two that I like now that's still with the Daily Wire. But I mean, he got Candace fired, bro. Even though Candace is doing way better now. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, dude, you a snake for that, bro. You're a rat. You rat. You rat.
Thank God, doing well, Stephen. How are you doing?
Okay, I want to ask, and I asked this affectionately. I'm not trying to be incendiary. You called me a jackass. How many dudes do you call a jackass, and then you go on this show? Could you tell me that? Could you answer that one first?
Hey, I appreciate you having me on, and the invitation, as you know, is open the other way around. It's shockingly, the answer is probably a lot, actually, in terms of the number of people who I've called a jackass, who I've then actually become friendly with, or who I've had on the show, or vice versa. So you know, you're in this business, you know it.
I got you. I'm not overly offended. Trust me on that. All right. But thank you for coming on the show. So let's get right into it. As you know, I spoke out against your petition to get President Trump to pardon former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. For those that don't know, Chauvin was sentenced to 22 years in prison after being convicted of unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter of George Floyd. I wondered if you would feel that way if the officer was black and the victim was Jewish. That was what I said. And your response was to call me a
dude. We're not asking the right questions. The real question is, would you feel the same if George Floyd was a white man? Because we all know if George Floyd was white, this would not be news. This wouldn't be news. I mean, come on. Who are we kidding here?
A race baiter. Why is that, Ben Shapiro?
You are a race
to me,
baiter.
The entire case against Derek Chauvin was rooted in a sort of public racial essentialism that I thought was unnecessary.
I have to agree with that. Like the whole thing is just bliggity black, bro. I'm gonna just keep it a stack with you. The whole thing, the whole Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, all of this is just a money grift. All of this is just a money grift, guys. They ain't do nothing with that money when they donated to Black Lives Matter. All of these celebrities and people that's giving their lives to this organization, to what, the 3 lesbian women that started this organization, they did absolutely nothing with this money. Go look at a black community right now. I'm telling you, it's still boo-boo.
Necessary to analyze the case. If I'm going to look at this case and just look at the facts of the case, the race of the person on the ground and the race of the officer are irrelevant, and we should treat it exactly the same, whether both people were black, both people are white, one person was Jewish, one person was not Jewish. The identity of the person on the ground, I think, should not be the deciding factor in whether or not.
See, when Stephen A. do this here, when he do this look, when he put the finger up, he's not listening. It's like he's toning out, like from here on out, my guys, because it's like at this point he has his mind made up. He doesn't agree with what you're going to say. So basically, he's just tuning everything out now. I'm telling you guys, I don't miss with body language. I'm telling you, this dude is not listening to you.
Derek Chauvin was convicted of second-degree murder. It should be the situation, the facts of the case, the autopsy report, and all of the rest. And so the thing that I actually objected to was the suggestion that my opinion would have changed, rooted in the.
What do you guys think in the chat, man? Do y'all think Derek Chauvin should be pardoned or not? Put it in the chat.
The, say, racial or religious identity of the person who died, as opposed to the racial or religious identity of the person who was the police officer. I just don't think that that's how we ought to decide criminal justice cases in general.
In fairness to you, I can understand that in general. Damn it, in most instances, I can agree with that. But those are cases that we hear about. I'm talking about the visual impact. So let's stay right there, Ben. I am a black man, and I see this black man on the ground, face down, handcuffs behind him. Face is imprinted into the pavement. The knee of the police officer is on the back of his neck.
Dude, I used to do moves like this on my baby brother when I was young, bro. For at least, not even 9 minutes, at least 15 minutes with doing wrestling moves from WWE. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, this isn't going to kill my brother. Even though he's still alive in the Air Force, by the way. So, I mean, okay, first of all, we gotta understand Derek Chauvin is like 5'6", bro. 5'7", 5'8" at max. George Floyd is like 6'5". This dude is gigantic. So there's no absolutely positive like way. If this dude was healthy, first of all, it wasn't on his neck, it was on his back. But there's no way that this this small guy's knee, is gonna take all of the air out of this 6'5" guy's back. I just don't see it happening. This is why they got weight classes for a reason in the boxing, UFC, things like that, guys. Like, I mean, this is why they have weight class, because this little guy is going to take more for this little guy to take this bigger guy down. I mean, that's just how it goes.
He's literally saying he can't breathe, to one point crying for.
If he can't breathe, how can he say he can't breathe? Stephen A. Come on, bro. This is what I'm talking about. Like, this is when people have to start using their brains as adults. Seriously, though, if the man say he can't breathe, what's going on, Maurice? If the man say he can't breathe, Stephen A., how the hell can he utter the words he can't breathe? If I can't breathe, I'm going to literally be, and other people are going to determine if I can't breathe or not. I'm not going to determine if I can't breathe if I'm talking. What are you talking about? A person underwater can't breathe. A person that's stuck in a fire with fumes and smoke, they can't breathe. You can't breathe because you got all this damn fentanyl in your system. That's why you can't breathe. What are you talking about?
For his mama. And it happened.
Fighting for his mama. Like, bro, this isn't a good case, Stephen A. This isn't a good argument that you're making. Ben Shapiro is finna smoke you. I don't like Ben Shapiro like that, guys, but he's definitely about to win this debate. Hands down.
For over 9 minutes. I understand from a technical perspective, from a specific analytical perspective, forensic evidence, et cetera, fentanyl in the system, et cetera. I got all of that. My point is, and my question to you at that time was, seeing that, how could you have another opinion? How could it be based on the preponderance of evidence that you threw into the fray in order to ask for this man to be pardoned? I'm just going by, like, there are certain things that you just see, and 1 + 1 = 2.
So, I mean, Stephen, actually, if you go back to my tweets at the time, May 30th and June 1st, if you look at my tweets, I'm saying the same kind of things you're saying right now. I'm saying the same kind of things at that time that everybody else is saying, seeing the tape, because there's no way to look at the tape.
I saw that.
And not be sort of shocked by what you're seeing on the tape, obviously. And then I think that the mark of a reasonable person is to change your opinion as the evidence changes. A lot of evidence emerged between the time that the tape was released, that horrible 9-minute tape, and the time the conviction actually happened. I mean, there's a full trial, there were autopsy reports, there was witness.
I've actually seen worse. See, that's the crazy part, guys. Like, am I tripping? Or am I just like am immune to a lot of crazy stuff because I'm from Chicago? But I've actually seen worse. I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. Like, I've seen way worse things on video than somebody begging for his mama, talking about he can't breathe off drugs, getting arrested by a police officer doing his job. I've seen what about the little girl that just got beat to death in Chicago? They're literally filming it. Where's the justice for her? Where's her? Like, I'm not saying give her a statue. I'm not with bail and none of that stuff. But I'm just saying, like, where's the black community with this little girl that just lost her life? I'm sorry I can't think of the name right now, but you guys glorify the wrong things. You guys are glorifying a drug addict, drug dealer, criminal rap sheet like this long. Dude literally put a gun, I'm talking a firearm, to a woman that was with child, a pregnant woman. The baby was unborn. This dude was ruthless.
Witness evidence. There were other people whose testimony was taken. There were multiple medical specialists who were called. And so in looking at all of that, that's the way we're supposed to adjudicate whether or not a person deserves to spend 22 years in prison, not based simply on our immediate gut response to the tape. And again,
Okay, we back. We back. Sorry, guys.
Actually, it turns out that the police do a lot of things that look really rough on tape and really difficult on tape. And this was one of those things. And then as we later learned that, for example, the sort of tactic that Chauvin is using there was actually trained by the Minneapolis Police Department, right? It's a submission technique that's used if you have a person who's resisting arrest, or if you learn.
Can you guys see and hear? Yeah, and that actually is true. It wouldn't be smart to pardon him because of the state charges. So yeah, for sure. Can you guys hear me or not? Okay, I think I'm back. Okay.
Learned during the course of the investigation that George Floyd was saying, "I can't breathe," before he was even taken out of the car. He says, "I can't breathe" on the longer tape 6 times before he's even taken out of the car. I mean, it's a very long interaction with the police officers before you get to that 9-minute tape, the part that we all saw. And there's a part of the story that you can't see on the tape, which is the reverse angle. You can't see that there's a big crowd that's shouting at Chauvin.
Okay,
Chauvin's responding to that crowd. One of the preliminaries to getting up off of Floyd that way is to call what's called a code 4, which is where it's an all clear, where you feel that the crowd is not a threat to you. In fact, even the EMTs who showed up to provide care for Floyd didn't call a code 4 when they arrived on scene because they thought that the crowd was too threatening. So once you take into account all of the facts, if your opinion doesn't change and the fact pattern is different from what you originally thought it was, then you're not doing your job as a commentator. So I can have the same gut response that you have when I first see that tape. The question is what you do when more of those facts emerge, when you do see more of that evidence emerge, when you do read the testimony and see the autopsies.
See, but I believe, and this is just my belief, because in fairness to you, you're absolutely right.
Are you even going to acknowledge the autopsy, Stephen A? See, that's the thing, bro. Like, this is a waste of time if you're not even going to acknowledge the fact that he had drugs in his system when he died. Like, lethal dosage, though. Right. Black lives matter with the exception of blacks. Exactly.
You did put out that tweet initially, and your position was it was shared by the Hannitys of the world, the Mark Levins of the world, and various others, obviously with a lot of people on the left as well, before the preponderance of evidence that you're alluding to came into play. I get that. So in fairness to you, I have to say that. But sometimes I'm going to say this to you because you're a pretty brilliant dude. Nobody can deny it. With what you've accomplished with the Daily Wire, what you've been able to do in your career. I'm just reading something. You were a syndicated columnist at the age of 17, for crying out loud. This is who you are. This is who I'm talking to here. Is it possible that sometimes we could be so brilliant that our intellect gets in the way of common sense? For example, what I mean by that is this, Ben.
Bro, what are you talking about?
It was a knee on his neck for 9.5 minutes. If that didn't happen, is he still alive? I'm not talking about today because anything could have happened to you. I'm just saying the fact that Derek Chauvin's knee was on his neck, that to me should speak for itself, because if the man is clamoring for you to get off the back of his neck while you got him handcuffed into the ground, okay, why is it wrong for us to stop there and say that was excessive on the part of the police officer?
Because, bro, George Floyd is 6 freaking 5. He is huge. The dude is literally huge. He was already on the ground when he was getting arrested. They sat him literally on the ground. And it's like he started tripping, and then he wanted to sit in the back of the police car. They're giving him what he wants. And then he started tripping in the back of the police car, saying he couldn't breathe. That's when he said he couldn't breathe, when he was in the back of the police car. Then when he got out of the police car, he started tripping.
Because you had him contained. He wasn't a threat to you. What's wrong with that thinking?
Okay, so there are a couple of things that could be argued by the
Oh my God. You got to be kidding me, bro. Look at this. This is like the biggest grift in history, man. Literally made this man a icon when this dude is a literal drug addict, criminal. This dude is a weirdo. Oh my goodness, bro. Black
defense,
folks are
and in fact,
so
were argued by
slow.
the defense in this case. One of them, again, was that this was a trained technique by the Minneapolis Police Department to keep somebody in this position so
all of
long as you have
these
not called
people.
a code 4, which is where you say
I
there's an
know
all clear,
half
and
of
now you
them
can
gave
move the
us
person
still,
who's on the
man.
ground
Still sad.
into the ambulance, for example, if you've already called the ambulance, or back into the police vehicle. When it comes to the actual question as to causation of death, right? You have to be the proximate cause of the death. It's not just enough for it to be a contributing factor, because it turns out that increased stress can cause death in a person who has a human heart that is significantly larger than normal. The autopsy showed that Floyd, unfortunately, had an incredibly enlarged heart, much heavier than normal. His lungs were much larger than a normal person's lungs because of heavy.
Dude, 6'5", bro. Everything is larger, all right?
And over time drug use. He had 11 nanograms of fentanyl in his system at the time per milliliter of blood, which is over 3 times what it would cause normally to kill somebody. The original autopsy report openly said that if George Floyd had been found in his house in the same exact physical condition, they would have called it death by overdose. So, all of these things taken into account raises the question of reasonable doubt, right? The standard in our criminal justice system is in fact a reasonable doubt standard. And that raises the question as to why there's not, at the very least, reasonable doubt. So you can say that your sort of first jump at this is he's guilty. Look at the knee on his neck. There's no damage to his neck tissue, by the way, in the autopsy report.
It was on his back.
You can say all of that, and you can say that that's a plausible explanation. I won't even make the case that that's not a plausible explanation. I'll make the case that a plausible explanation is not enough to convict a man in court, especially based on the surrounding circumstances, the amount of pressure that was brought. This was not a fair trial, was one of the points that I'm making. So when it comes to the actual trial itself, there are members of the jury who are at actual rallies wearing shirts that said, "I can't breathe," before they were actually on the jury. There are members of the jury who have openly said that they felt public pressure to convict in a particular way. The president of the United States, or one of the people who was running for president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, was openly calling for his conviction. The Minneapolis city paid the family of George Floyd, I believe it was a $27 million payout in the middle of the trial.
They were pressured, and Stephen A. knows this, man. That's what I'm saying. Like, Stephen A., this is what I don't like about the dude. Like, he pretends like he's dumb. Like, you don't know that this was clearly political, man. This was clearly politically motivated. And you're sitting there with your dumb face again. We already talked about this, guys. When he do that, when we already know what that means when he do that. But, dude, you know this is politically motivated, and you're sitting there acting like you have no idea what he's talking about. Are you ever going to acknowledge the autopsy? Yes or no? Because this is getting ridiculous.
So all of this tends to go to, is that an impartial jury, right? These all have serious consequences for the jury system.
Not even
and so there's really a few separate questions. One is, was Chauvin responsible for Floyd's death? I think on that question, I would say no. You can say yes. I would say at the very least there's reasonable doubt. And then there's the question of the amount of pressure that was brought on the jury in this particular case to bring a verdict. This was the most highly publicized trial of the modern era by a long shot, because the incident itself had spurred so much public angst and outrage and massive protests involving 20 million people and riots that had cost the taxpayers some $2 billion, or insurance companies some $2 billion. It was the most highly publicized trial probably since the OJ trial. And because of that amount of public pressure, did Chauvin receive a fair trial is obviously a very crucial question here.
Bro. It was
Don't learn cybersecurity and do this instead. Look, 45% of hiring managers admit that their organizations are reluctant.
If George Floyd was white, if George Floyd was white, this would not be huge like how it is now, man. Everybody knows that.
But it sounds like your position is that this is more of a political issue as opposed to a policing issue. And what I would say to you as a black man in America, that they are.
It is, bro. Is he good? Chat. Is he straight? It literally is politically motivated, Stephen A. What are you drinking over there? Black Lives Matter, white police officer, white, what do they call them? Cis male police officers, white cis straight male, Christian male. Like, come on, bro. This is why white men don't want to be officers anymore because of this case, if I'm being honest with you.
There are times, and there's a preponderance of evidence throughout the years that shows that policing has been an issue as it pertains to black men, which is one.
What does that have to do with the case, Stephen A? Stay on topic, buddy.
the things that we constantly bring up. So when that incident happened, I'm thinking about the officer himself, Ben Shapiro, and his intent from the standpoint, you're having your knee on the back of his neck. No matter what, from a medical perspective, we can deduce may have transpired in the end. If you didn't have your knee on the back of his neck for that amount of time or exceeding 9 minutes, this would not have been.
I don't think Stephen A. realized the dude was dead already. He was literally a dead man walking when he consumed the fentanyl. When he got pulled over, that's on literal video. I still have the picture up on my page right now in my YouTube community. Dude literally has a white substance in his mouth. It looked like a big bag of dope. That's what it looks like to me.
And the outcome. And because you were insensitive to that, as a trained police officer who should know better, there should be a level of culpability that comes in your direction. So when somebody looks at you, I look at, and this is where I wanted to go as well. I'm looking at a Ben Shapiro, and this is what I meant when I asked the question about you being about if George Floyd was a Jewish person. I owe you an explanation for that. So I want to give it to you right now. You are known as a proud.
That's actually racist, but I'm gonna just keep going. But even though Jewish people isn't an actual race, but that's still very bigoted of you.
Jewish individual, incredibly supportive of the Jewish community, being amongst them, Israel, other things. And I was bringing this up because I said, if that were a Jewish person, the conclusion that you ultimately reached, would you have been patient enough to draw that conclusion, peeling from the information that was deduced on an objective level to reach the conclusion that, hey, you know what? I don't think he should have been put in jail. That's where I was going, because I know how defensive, or I shouldn't say defensive, but a defender of the Jewish community that you are. And that's what I was thinking along those lines.
I mean, but I certainly hope so, because I can name you a dozen Jewish criminals who absolutely deserve to be in jail. Right. And Jeffrey Epstein was a Jew.
No, I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
Hell, right. I mean, I think that
I'm just talking about that kind of incident.
And my point.
What do you mean, just that kind of incident, man? What are you talking about? A criminal is a criminal. What do you mean? What are you talking about, bro? This doesn't even make sense.
Point is,
are you even acknowledging the fact that George Floyd was a criminal?
Whenever, I'm also a lawyer, right? I mean, my identity as a Jew does not mean I have solidarity with a criminal who happens to be a Jew, or a person who's in a controversial law enforcement confrontation who happens to be a Jew. I mean, my job is to literally remove myself from the, and I think also that, as those original tweets show, I don't think that you have to have racial solidarity with a person in order to feel empathy for that person's situation. I think that the whole basis of a democratic republic, or us having a conversation right now, is the fact that we can speak to each other across racial and identitarian lines. And so, again, I think that there are an enormous number of people in the country who disagree with me, by the way, who share both my race, and a lot of Jews who, I would say the vast majority of Jews disagree with me on this, or many white Americans who looked at George Floyd and had exactly the same reaction. And as you say, initially, I had the same reaction as you, and that had nothing to do with race. And so the kind of idea that if, let's put it this way, if race is a barrier to logic, then race is the problem, not the solution.
And that's actually facts. That's facts, Stephen A. This is literally race baiting. The whole thing is race baiting, because deep down inside, Stephen A., they will not talk about this if George Floyd was white. If Derek Chauvin did this to a white man that was off meth, you guys probably would have even, this was a white man, a white straight Christian man that this happened to, you guys probably would have reported that the dude had fentanyl in his system. Y'all don't even report that on the left, that this dude literally was pumped up with drugs.
Right. Let me ask you this. I mean, if you looked at, you said before that you didn't look at the autopsy report. You're not taking a lot of time looking at the evidence of the autopsy. What would it take for you?
You didn't even look at it. What are we talking about here now? Now what are we doing? Stephen A? Why are we even having a conversation? You didn't look at the autopsy. What the? Am I tripping? So what are you basing this off of then? If you didn't even look at the autopsy, what is you basing your claim off? What is your claim based off of, Stephen A? I'm confused now. Like, you look like a potato at this point, man. Like, come on, dude.
To change your mind on the case, or is there nothing that could change your mind on the case because you saw the tape, for example?
Thank you. Thank you. He literally isn't going to change his mind. He literally has a blank stare, like he's doing it now. He doesn't care about what Ben Shapiro is talking about right now. He doesn't care about the autopsy. All he cares is Derek Chauvin's white, George Floyd's black. He was Derek Chauvin was a police officer. Derek Chauvin was a black man that was walking down the street, which is not true, by the way. He was actually in the car.
Example.
Well, it wouldn't take much, and this is why I said this, because normally I would look at the autopsy reports or whatever. You know, I saw people bring up.
What are you doing on this then? What do you mean you would normally do? This dude is full of crap. I'm sorry I keep pausing it, guys. But I can't. I can't with Stephen A. I literally can't with this dude. I cannot. If you normally would do it, why don't you do it? Why wouldn't you do it in one of the most controversial cases in America? You wouldn't think this is one of the most important times to look at an autopsy? Or am I tripping, chat? This dude makes millions, by the way. This dude literally makes millions of dollars. I'm not envious or nothing, but bro, this is one of the most controversial cases in American history, and you didn't bother to look at the autopsy, yet you're trying to make a debate against Ben Shapiro on your show that you invited him on, like, dude, that you had to postpone because it always got to be some black people time bullshit, right? That you had to postpone for 2 extra days late. Like, this is ridiculous, dude. This is literally a joke. This is a joke. This is a joke.
That's record. I saw people bringing up fentanyl in the system. I saw all of these things. And all I could come to, Ben, fair or unfair, was that none of that matters if he wasn't on the ground with a knee on the back of his neck.
But here's the thing, Stephen A. He didn't start off on the ground with the knee in the back. He started off sitting down on his own. Then he was in the back of the patrol car. Then he had to get wrestled down out of the vehicle because he was tweaking. What are you talking about? You didn't even, I know this dude didn't watch the full video. He couldn't have watched it. Couldn't have. He didn't even read the autopsy. You just heard somebody said that he had fentanyl in his system. No, I'm not just going to sit here and say, oh, somebody said George Floyd had fentanyl in his system, so now I believe George Fentanyl had Floyd in his system. Like, no, I actually read the paper. I read the autopsy, and it said 11.0 grams of fentanyl with on top of 3 grams of methamphetamine. Yo, and he had alcohol in his system. The dude was literally like, he's done. He's done. Okay.
For 9+ minutes.
This is
because
crazy.
I'm looking at a trained police officer who should know better.
This is
I
really
looked at
crazy.
the experts who were saying they're trained. There was no reason, and you saw it. I'm sure you saw this, and not to say that you would embrace it with the level of sincerity that others may, because I know the level of skepticism that you look at when you see the news outlets. And by the way, I don't blame you. I'm with you on that, okay? But I would say to you, listening to experts talk about how police officers are trained and pointing to the fact that Derek Chauvin had no business being in that position and putting George Floyd in that position, particularly once he was handcuffed and contained. To me,
so you mean to tell me a police officer isn't in a position to arrest somebody who has drugs? That he could have given that to somebody. He could have given that to a child. He could have given that to a child, and a kid could have been dead on top of him being dead too. What are you talking? Am I tripping? This dude, let me go back. Because I know I wasn't just, look, listen, guys, I was born at night, but not last night, okay?
Pointing to the fact that Derek Chauvin had no business being in that position and putting George Floyd
What do you mean he had no business being in that position? He's arresting him. You have to use force if necessary, and that's what he had to do. That's what you do when you're a cop. What are you talking about, bro? This dude is crazy. This dude is nuts.
In that position, particularly once he was handcuffed and contained. To me, that, along with the ultimate outcome, is all the evidence I need. And that's where we might differ.
Yo, this dude is a joke. This is a grown ass man, bro. This dude is a grown ass man. So that's all the evidence I need. Let's go back, Chad. Oh my God.
With the ultimate outcome is all the evidence I need, and that's where we might differ.
I mean, that's totally fair.
First of all, the knee wasn't even on his neck, Stephen A. It was on his back. If you look at the footage, and if you use your true eyes, if you don't allow your eyes to lie to you, which I don't even think is possible, you can clearly see that the knee, his right knee, was on the right side of his shoulder blade, or what you call it, the trapezius. It was around the trapezius area when it came to his shoulder. It was nowhere near the dude's neck. Get real.
If we differ on that, I guess the question I would ask you is, given the fact that that was a Minneapolis Police Department trained protocol, given the fact that Floyd did ask to be removed from the car, I mean, in the lead.
Thank you. He was literally in the car. He was in the back of the patrol car, Stephen A. Saying, I can't breathe. Yeah, you can't breathe because you're high. You are coked out. You're not even coked out. You fettied out. You're fettied out. He was fettied out, Stephen A. And he's still not going to listen. This is the most insane part. He's still not going to listen. I don't agree with Ben Shapiro and everything, but he's definitely right on this situation.
Lead up to the situation, the part of the tape that nobody watches, he was actually outside the car. The police officers move him inside the car. He says he's claustrophobic, and then he claims 6 consecutive times that he cannot breathe while he's in the car. So if the idea is that it was the police officer's knee that deprived him of breath, he was already claiming that he couldn't breathe inside the car, suggesting he was already in the middle of some sort of medical event, right? And then he was brought outside the car. I guess the question that I have for you, again, is what level of evidence would need to be shown to for you to get to reasonable doubt? I mean, you seem incredibly certain, right? All I'm saying is that the reasonable doubt standard is what pertains in criminal justice. What would it take to get you to reasonable doubt? Or is there no reasonable doubt that could be achieved simply by dint of the fact that he had his knee on his neck? By the way, it's not for the full 9 minutes. There are minutes where it's on his back. I mean, even the prosecution acknowledges that. The real question is, I think, the last 50 seconds, right? The last 50 seconds of the tape where Floyd stops breathing and Chauvin's knee is still on his neck. That is really the question as to whether this goes into criminal charge territory. Otherwise, he ends up being in a position where he's actually just using a typical subdual technique before you put the guy back in the car and you take him off to jail.
And I'm saying, to answer your question, there's absolutely nothing that could convince me that Derek Chauvin deserved a different outcome because of what you just articulated, what we saw, even if it's for the last 50 seconds. I'm not changing my position.
Bro, what do you keep saying Derek Chauvin for? Dude, George Floyd was the one that had 3 possible outcomes. He was on the ground outside at first. All he had to do was just get up and just get in the patrol car and get processed and get released. That's all they were going to do anyway. I mean, it's freaking Minnesota. It's freaking Tim Walz, Tampon Tim. So you were definitely going to get let back on the street. The second outcome is you get in the patrol car, go to the station, get processed, and then get let back on the street because you already know you're going to get let back on the street because your governor's Tim Walz yet again. So the second one isn't really going to be different from the first one. And the third one is you're just going to get forced out of the car, which is what happened. You're going to get put on your back. And, I mean, you're going to have to chill out, bro. Like, what are you doing? But, I mean, they're just not even going to acknowledge the fact that the dude got drugs in his system because that don't matter. 11.0 grams of fentanyl when you only need 3.0 grams of fentanyl to die. They won't even take that into consideration because these people are stupid.
Opposition. I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, this is a real question. Do you think? So we've talked about race a little bit. Do you think that Chauvin was a racist? This is a race-based crime, in your view?
Do I believe that?
Yes.
I don't believe that based on anything about his history that they articulated because I know how people conjure up evidence to go at it. I do believe his actions
like twice every week,
indicated
like 3 times a week,
because I didn't see him doing that with anybody else. And the times that we were living in and the climate, as you articulated accurately, I might add, the heightened level of sensitivity that it exists because of brutality on the part of some police officers. By the way, I never say police brutality, because I don't like to castigate all police officers that way. I know if I'm in trouble, I'm calling 911. I'm not going to sit up there and denigrate police officers throughout this country. But
your party does. You just said you're with the left. Your party does not support the police, Stephen A. So how does that align with your values? Democrats support defunding the police. Republicans back the blue. What are you talking about? If you are the one that say you're going to call the police, or I'm going to be quick to call the police, why aren't this? You see how this dude just contradicts himself? This is why I can't take this dude seriously at all. This dude is a joke.
Rogues that exist in every profession, and I think there's rogues that exist with certain police officers. So to me, he came across as one, and that was my problem with it. Having said that, I want to get to something else because we're going to stay on this subject of race in this regard.
We're tired of hearing about
when
race.
You saw the climate that exists. I understand you believe it was primarily instigated by the left. I want to know where you draw the line in the sand, and in terms of veering away from the political and just looking at a case on its merit and saying, this is what I see, this is where I stand, completely devoid of politics. I'm not talking race, I'm talking politics, meaning this has nothing to do with politics. This is the climate that we're living in. This officer should have known better, etc. Do you ever find yourself in a position where you're able to dismiss yourself from the political impact of something or the political agenda of something to draw your conclusions?
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that in this particular case, this is a good indicator of trying to withdraw from a political sort of calculation, given the fact that, as some people have pointed out, on a pragmatic level, they've suggested that President Trump pardoning Derek Chauvin would be bad for President Trump politically. And the case that I've made is that's his job, determine what's pragmatic for him politically. It's my job to call something out as wrong when I see it to be wrong. In terms of criminal justice cases that have involved race, where I've removed myself on the other side, I mean, there are a bunch of them. Walter Scott, right, is a great example of a black man who was victimized by a white police officer. The police officer ends up convicted and going to jail. You're saying I'm not campaigning on his behalf because he deserves to go to jail, the officer in the Walter Scott case. There have been a number of horrifying or police-involved crimes in which the police officer deserves to lose his job and or go to jail, depending on the activities of the police officer. And you have to analyze those one by one. And I think that what we've seen, particularly from the legacy media over the course of the last many years, is that the only types of stories that tend to break into the news are ones with a black victim and a white police officer.
Go, man. And that's what that's what I'm saying. Like, this is why if George Floyd was white, this would have never worked. You feel what I'm saying? Because it's not a story, guys. Let me just tell you guys some truth here. They need crime for everything, okay? Crime is a business for these people. They need crime for jails. They need crime for ambulances. They need crime for police officers because, I mean, if it isn't crime, you wouldn't need these jobs. You feel what I'm saying? They need crime for news, which is media. If there's no crime, what are you going to report? A cat being stuck in a tree? You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to understand why the Democrats do what they do. See, they don't want a perfect utopia. They don't want peace like the like the Republicans do. The Democrats want division. They want war. They want violence. They want communism. They want they want like a Marxist agenda. And they're fascist. You feel what I'm saying? So, I mean, us being conservatives and we believe in capitalism and things like that, that doesn't really work with us. You know what I'm saying? And then we believe in the Constitution as well. These people don't believe in the Constitution. These people are crooks. These people are honestly insane.
Media immediately jump to a particular narrative conclusion on the basis of that. And even if the facts end up debunking that conclusion, that narrative continues to be maintained. I mean, a good example of this might be Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, where the initial claim was that Michael Brown was shot in the back by a police officer in cold blood. And it turned out that every aspect of that story was false. And yet there are still people who will, sort of repeat the hands up, don't shoot lie that never happened. I mean, that literally never happened. And that was debunked by the Eric Holder Department of Justice, for example. Okay. So I think that we really do have to look at each one of these situations in isolation. We're talking about the life of a person. If you're talking about narrative, if you're talking about sort of generalized race in America, then I think that it's important to look at as much data as humanly possible. I'm a data-driven person, and so I'll look at
Thank you. Why don't you want the numbers, my guy? You don't think that will be, helpful for you? You don't think you could utilize that?
Everything from the studies of Roland Fryer over at Harvard University about police
misconduct
toward minorities, and it ranges on the scale, by the way. What Roland Fryer studies tend to show is that, for example, there's no disproportionate killing of black men by the police, there's disproportionate use of lower level uses of forces by police depending on the circumstance based on race. So that's something Roland Fryer has found at Harvard, right? Like that's the sort of conversation that I think is useful and interesting. But I think that when it gets telescoped into one particular case, and then that case is used as sort of the meta narrative justifier, that's really negative, and that's really bad for the country. Because what we should be doing you want to lose trust in the criminal justice system overall, telegraph all race relations into the OJ case, the Michael Brown case, the Derek Chauvin case, the George Floyd case. If you take all of America,
right, undisputed facts, man, and you guys are still going against the facts. I think somebody said in the comments, facts aren't political, which is absolutely spot on. I should have put that up.
Race relations, and you sort of put it on the back of one particular fact pattern. Usually the fact pattern is not capable of carrying that narrative burden.
But Ben, isn't that easy for us on the outside looking at data, looking at analytics to draw those conclusions, as opposed to us having a personal experience or a personal investment in it? Like, for example, when it comes to the Jewish community, I would never think for 1 second that I could fully grasp and inhale what you experience as a Jewish person in the United States of America, when we've seen heightened levels of anti-Semitism, for example, and people alluding to those kind of things. Well, I'm not a Jewish person, so I wouldn't know. What about the argument that when we talk about Black folks, you can point to data all you want to, and we get that part, but the real experiences that we endure from time to time is not something that you can necessarily calculate. How serious
and
do you
nobody
take?
cares, bro. I'm going to give you guys a news flash, okay? Nobody cares about what you are talking about when it comes to your personal life, okay? You are not an exception to the rule. And that's what people need to understand. Just because it happened in your life don't mean it happened in everybody else's life, okay? Your life sucks. That doesn't mean everybody's life sucks. I'll make an argument that it kind of does, but I'm just saying, though, I'm not going to base that off of my beliefs. I'm going to base that off of numbers and statistics that everybody's life sucks. And I can, I mean, what? How much, what, $36 trillion in debt in America? I'm pretty sure everybody's life kind of sucks in America right now. If you're not a rich millionaire, and their lives probably suck too.
Those assertions coming from a community, whether it's your own, mine, or anybody else's.
Obviously, it's true that we can never fully get into one another's shoes, right? I mean, that's just the reality of the world, and that's true beyond race. That's just true for individuals. You, Stephen, or me.
But you are not an exception to the rule, though. Who cares about you? I mean, if I'm being honest, nobody cares about these people, especially these celebrities. You think these celebrities care about the average person that supports them out there? Hell no. You are an extra penny to these people. They don't care about you at all, if I'm being honest. Even though, what was the Dodger Cat lady? She pissed me off because she literally told you guys she don't like her fans. She don't even like y'all, and y'all still made her famous and rich and millionaire. That's insanity.
For me as an individual, you can't live in my shoes. I can't live in we're different people. We live different lives. Yeah, but when it comes to making public policy, then the only sort of gauge that you can have really is the data. Because anecdotal evidence, you can't make public policy for millions of people based on anecdotal evidence, because you can't legislate people's feelings. I mean, this is sort of one of my things. You know, when it comes to trying to craft law, for example, making law based on the personal feelings of people's quote unquote lived experiences is a bad way to make law that is going to have to be generally applicable. Because I may have particular feelings about a particular criminal case based on my own personal experiences. But if we do that, then what you end up with is a really high level of tribalism, in which it's if your racial identity prevails or my racial identity prevails, really bad things can come from that. And the law is designed to treat people as equal individuals underneath it. And so, you know, the relevance of lived experience, that may play a part in us being able to understand one another as individuals if we're having conversation over dinner, or if we're giving advice to each other about our kids. But when it comes to actually making public policy, it's a different thing.
Yeah, you got it. And you make a valid point about policy. When you talk about policy, you can't just go by personal experience. It's got to be the numbers. It's got to be the data. I totally get that. By the way, just as an aside, before I get to my next question, lung expert testified George Floyd died because his breathing was restricted. So I just wanted to point that out now, you know, because again, that's with the weight on his neck. We got to remember that. But let me go to this. I mean, the Trump pardon which you obviously was advocating for, would only affect Chauvin's federal conviction.
Oh,
where he
wait a
pleaded guilty
minute.
for violating Floyd.
Did that come from the autopsy? Let's go back, ladies and gentlemen. So you said that he died because of lack of breathing, or what was it?
Again, that's with the weight on his neck. We got to remember that. But let me go to this. I mean, the Trump pardon, by the way, just as an aside, before I get to my next question, lung expert testified George Floyd died because his breathing was restricted. So I just want.
So he claims that a lung expert said that George Floyd died because his breathing was restricted. Did that come from the autopsy that you didn't read? Did that come from an autopsy that you didn't read, or did that come from a lung expert that probably didn't read the damn autopsy either, that probably had no affiliations with the case at all or whatsoever? Probably just another lib that you heard from off the internet that probably made his own observation.
Just wanted to point that out now, because again, that's with the weight on his neck. We got to remember that. But let me go.
Did that come from the autopsy? Yes or no? Probably not, guys. Let's keep it going.
Go to this. I mean, the Trump pardon, which you obviously was advocating for, would only affect Chauvin's federal conviction where he pleaded guilty for violating Floyd's civil rights. The pardon would have no bearing on his state sentence for second-degree and third-degree murder. Even if Minnesota Governor Tim Walz pardoned him, he'd remain in prison regardless of Trump's actions. Of all the things to ask President Trump to pardon, then, why this, Ben? Why
so I've asked President Trump to do many, many things. This is certainly not the only thing that I'd like President Trump to do, ranging from tariff policy to foreign policy to tax policy. There are many things that I ask President Trump to do on a daily basis on the show. On this one, because I think that it was such a driver of a narrative that I actually do think is false and has been damaging in the United States, which is the idea that there is a tremendous amount of racial tension in America and that's accelerated over the past couple of decades. I think that it's important to elevate individual justice above, again, that sort of group identity-based narrative for the sake of the body politic. The BLM movement of 2020 was at the very least incredibly divisive and on a material level incredibly damaging to the United States. And I think that one of the
$2 billion worth, to be exact, Ben. Yeah, $2 billion worth of property damage that these Black Lives Matter crazies have done to this country. But nobody wants to bring that fact up, though, right? Let's continue.
One of the things that I'd like to get back to in the United States is a time when we actually had pretty good racial feelings about one another, and it wasn't all that long ago. I think that if you go back to the polling data, yes, if you go back
between the Black community and the Jewish community, sure, but the Black community and white community.
So if you go back to Gallup polls of 2012, literally 2012.
Okay.
Stephen A., just because you make these faces, it doesn't mean it's going to make you any more right, bro. Oh, but not the Black and the white community? Like, yeah, do you believe me more because my eyes got bigger? Like, no, dude, that's not how this works.
In 2012, 75% of white Americans thought that race relations were on a good path with Black Americans, and 65% of Black Americans also thought that race relations were on a good path in the United States. And then by 2014, it had all dumped down into the below 50 mark for both whites and Black Americans, and it never recovered from there. And one of the inciting events of that was, in fact, the rise in Ferguson and the sort of elevation of this narrative that America was deeply systemically racist in incurable ways, and that every inequality in American life could be chalked up to inequities that were buried in the founding of the country, and this whole broader racial narrative, which I think, again, that the best way
I will give you guys that Ben is definitely trying to stay relevant, because the Daily Wire is definitely going rock bottom, guys. After they lost Brett Cooper and Candace Owens, man, it's wraps. I mean, of course they got Matt Walsh and they got Michael Knowles, but I mean, how long is that really gonna last?
To get past a lot of these problems, honestly, it sounds naive, but it isn't. It's just reality. Any group problems, the best way to get past a group problem, if you're an individual, is to talk with another individual and to treat another individual as an individual, as opposed to trying to reduce everything to group identity, which is the reason I think I objected so strongly when you started talking about racial identity with regard to this case, because my whole point was, when it comes to interpersonal situations, the best way to treat other human beings, of course, is not as a member of a race.
Want to be treated.
The best way to treat them is as individuals. And of course, a race is a component of their identity.
How you want to be treated, man. That's what Jesus teaches us. Treat your neighbor how you want to treat yourself.
Treat them as an individual, regardless of what their race is.
Yeah, but my pushback with you would be, Ben, I came at what you said, not at you. You see what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of things that you say and do that I don't disagree with. You know, I'm a centrist, and there's some things. Well, damn it, when you make sense, you make sense. Okay, we're having this discussion right here. I'm listening to some of your points. I'm like, he's making sense on something. I mean, I get it. I might disagree.
Like what, Stephen A? Name one. You're not listening to him at all. I would love for you to name one thing that you agree with Ben Shapiro on during this conversation that you two had. I would love to hear it.
Agree, but I can't refute where you're coming from. It makes a lot of sense. And what I would ask you before we go, because I know you have you got to get on out of here, and I can't thank you enough for your time. And again, I'm going to come on your show when you ask me to as well. I really, really appreciate it. I'm not going to run from it, but I got to ask you this. When you talk about just treating individuals as individuals, one could easily argue that Ben Shapiro, with over 7.2 million followers, by the way, on his YouTube show. Okay, let's get that out the way with the Daily Wire and what you've been doing with that for years.
You don't have to talk like a pastor, okay, Stephen A? And Ben Shapiro got 7.1 million followers on YouTube. Oh, you sound like a Sunday pastor, dude. Chill.
Folks are not necessarily treated as individuals. There is groupthink. There are, and I'm not talking about just you. I'm talking about all of us. I'm talking about all of us. I'm guilty of this. You're guilty. Everybody, in my estimation, where we think about something. When you had an issue with how I came at you, you brought up the left. And I'm disagreeing with the left at least 50% of the time, but you associated me with the left. When you've disagreed with others, I've heard you associate them with a group as opposed to treating them as individuals. So that seems to be counter to what you just articulated.
So I think that you're right to point out that I should characterize you as an individual with individual political views. Sure, I could do a better job of that. And when it comes to ideological grouping, I will say there is a difference between ideological grouping and, say, racial grouping. Right, race is an immutable characteristic of who people.
But then when we get into things like this, guys, when we get to black, white, things like this, we got to ask ourselves, what is black? Is black the skin color on your body, or is it an actual culture that people live by when it comes to being black? Like, rap music, sagging your pants, what I'm saying? Not knowing how to basically be a good reader, you know what I'm saying? Because people love slang and you got to talk slang because you're black. Because if we're going to go off the fact that black is a color, like when it comes to your skin, then why the hell do Africans come over here and do way better than us? They're actually the most educated migrants when they migrate to America. It's Africans, believe it or not. So if they can do it, why can't we do it? Oh, because it's a culture problem? Okay. Now we're getting somewhere, finally.
Who people are, no matter how many Kenny G tunes you listen to, Stephen, you'll still be a black man. And no matter, and no matter what racial stereotype I engage in, I'll still be a nerdy Jewish guy. That's just the way it is. But when it comes to ideological groups are quite real, obviously. And so describing people as a member of an ideological camp, I don't think is targeting a group in the same way as it would be to target blacks as a group, or Jews as a group, or Asians as a group, or any other immutable characteristic.
Hey, Ben, we're running out of time. I know you've got to go. I've got to go. I would love to further this conversation with you into the future. Your show, my show, and it doesn't matter. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I'm thankful that you came on. My last question, am I still a jackass? I just want to make sure. Am I still a jackass? I just want to know.
No. Now you're the...
Yes, you are. You're a jackass grifter, and you don't know anything about nothing. He honestly pissed me off by saying he didn't read the autopsy, bro. I wouldn't even have agreed to this conversation. I wouldn't even have agreed to this debate. Because if you didn't read the autopsy, why the hell are you talking to me? You didn't read it. So you don't know how he truly died. You're just basing it off of what? A camera? Like, how many, you do know there's different angles to cameras and things like that. Like, there are many possible ways that George Floyd could have died. You wouldn't even have known that he died from drugs if you just read the damn autopsy, Stephen A. But you wouldn't even do that. Insanity. And just think about this, guys, before I play. Think about it. If Stephen A. Smith didn't read the autopsy, you really think the average black person read the autopsy about George Floyd? Absolutely, positively freaking not. Absolutely, positively freaking not, bro. You know the average person did not see George Floyd autopsy and be like, oh, this guy had, fentanyl, methamphetamine, alcohol, enlarged in heart, enlarged lungs. Like, they're not gonna, no, they're not gonna read that, bro. Sorry. Lethal dosage for fentanyl, 3.0 grams. How much did he have? 11? That's almost 4 times the lethal dosage to kill a human, basically. So that's not even like a human that you're killing at that point. You're killing a damn camel or a horse or a bear almost. That could kill a bear. And you're talking about, I can't breathe.
You're the best, Steven. That's how this works.
I got you. Ben Shapiro, man, I appreciate it, man. I'm looking forward to coming on your show, and I'm looking forward to having you back on so we can further this conversation, because obviously we're both running out of time. Thank you for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
Man, this is absolute joke. Absolute freaking joke, man. Stephen A., you're a clown, bro. Didn't even read the autopsy. And I'm honestly not surprised, because this dude is a basketball commentator, guys. Let's just remember what Stephen A. really is. He is a basketball commentator. This dude don't really know nothing about politics. Then the fact that people said that he's going to run in 2028. What are you talking about? Patchy the Pirate has a better chance of winning. What do you mean? He has no political experience. I don't know, guys. It's like, when it comes to the whole Derek Chauvin thing, I mean, if the guy's innocent, why not just let him go? Because if he was black, you guys will let him go, right? I would assume you would if he's innocent. And if you leftoids, stuck to your logic, you would let that black man go if he was innocent. But a police officer that was doing his job, trying to keep the streets clean from literal drugs that could kill you, this man is getting arrested, stabbed in jail, or in prison, I should say. He's getting stabbed in prison, got to watch over his back every single day. He got half of the world hating him. Like, this is just stupid. This is stupid. This is absolutely stupid, man. They should, now, I'm not going to sit up here and cap and say that Ben Shapiro isn't trying to, stay relevant and things like that. But, I mean, is he wrong, though, guys? Is he wrong? No way, Jose. No way, Jose. Sorry if you guys came in late, but we just finished the basically, I don't even want to call it a debate, because this was just absolutely ridiculous. Stephen A. had no facts. He had no numbers. I believe the only fact that he tried to bring up was that a lung expert claimed that George Floyd had lack of respiratory or something like that. Basically, he had lack of breathing. And I don't even know if that came from the autopsy, but that's what I'm saying. It's dumb. It's absolutely dumb. Basing his claims off of what? A YouTuber, a TikToker? Like, I don't even understand where these people get their information from nowadays, especially celebrities. Because Stephen A. is a celebrity now. I mean, he's the biggest sports commentator, and he live in California and Miami and all that stuff. Like, come on, bro. He's basically Babylon now. But yeah, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Who won this debate? I mean, I'm not really for either side. I don't like both of them, if I'm being honest. So that's why I'm like, I'm not going to be biased when it comes to any of these guys. But if I had to choose, I would definitely say Ben Shapiro won, and it wasn't even close, because Ben Shapiro had more facts than Stephen A. Stephen A. is basing his claims off of race. Like, okay, but what if, George Floyd was white? Then what would this be? The news wouldn't have a story. No one will be talking about this, and it would just be an average Wednesday. So, like I said, guys, Let me know what you guys think in those comments, man. Make sure you guys hit that like, subscribe button. Tune in next time, guys, and I'll see you later. And I am out of here. Peace out.